Hi, everyone. I'm Eric D'Souza, and today we're going to be discussing Canada's newest victory. Jonathan Whitelaw is an author, award-winning journalist, and broadcaster. He recently moved to Edmonton from Scotland, and my first impression of him so far is that it was a good pickup for Canada. So, welcome to Canada, Jonathan.
What a lovely introduction. Thank you very much, Eric. And I'm grateful to be here, grateful to be on this side of the Atlantic, this side of the pond, even if it's, minus whatever it is outside.
We'll get to that. I know, or sorry, one discussion I have a lot with authors, obviously, as we talk about writing, but because I'm talking to Canadian authors a lot, it's obviously like, let's talk about Edmonton, let's talk about what it is to be on the East Coast. But one experience I don't get is sort of first impressions. So you haven't been here that long yet.
No.
What's been your first impressions of Canada?
Very, very welcoming. As I said, glad to be here. There's no sort of hyperbole. We got the opportunity, my family and I, to come over here in May. But it'd been a long time coming. We were all very, very excited to be here. Or excited to get over here, I beg your pardon. So we moved to Edmonton in May, right slap bang in the middle of the Stanley Cup playoffs, with the Oilers and the Flames. And where we were staying in Edmonton was about 2 blocks around the corner from Rogers Place. So we flew into Calgary, drove up to Edmonton, and it was the Sunday night. I think it was game 3 and or game 2 or something like that. And the place was awash with Oilers fans. And of course they won. And then a few nights later, when the series came back to Rogers Place, by that point, the strange thing is that when we knew that we were coming to Edmonton, I bought my wife and I Oilers jerseys for Christmas last year. In fact,
good idea.
So we put them on and we went for a walk, and we'd been following it a little bit in the UK, but with the time differences, stuff like that, and with a brand new baby, it wasn't great to be getting up at 2:00 in the morning to watch games. Whereas now I get to switch it on at 2 PM on a Saturday, or 6:00, 7:00, 8:00 at night. It's fantastic. I never haven't missed a game since. But we were made to feel very, very welcome. I got my picture taken outside Rogers Place. I put it on Twitter. It ended up going viral. I was on CTV and CBC and things like that. It was quite incredible, quite an incredible first 48 hours. And thankfully that sort of very welcoming attitude has extended to everywhere and anywhere that we've been. So it's been great. We're genuinely really, really glad to be here, and we've been made to feel very, very welcome in the country and Alberta and everywhere we go, really.
I'm glad we live up to our reputation sometimes.
Absolutely. it exceeded that reputation and expectations as well. Yeah, absolutely, certainly.
Well, I mean, now you're seeing how fanatic we are about hockey, but I guess compared to UK football, we're still
oddly enough, it's a very, very different atmosphere. I'm an Everton supporter. In fact, I've got my Everton mug there, just handily had it, product placement. But when you go to the football or the soccer in the UK, sometimes, depending on where it is, depending on what teams are playing in the situation, it can feel like you've taken a step back in time 100 years, and you've got and not in a good way, I should add. Whereas, as I've just mentioned, with that little story about being being very much adopted into the Oilers fandom and all the rest of it, there's a lot more of a kind of unity about it, a lot more family friendly element to it as well. Don't get me wrong, it's sports, and sports will always attract a certain degree of trouble. I'm a journalist, I know all too well that that's the case. But yeah, it's different and the same all at once, if that makes sense. It's you get fanatics and you get enthusiasts and you get people that just want to enjoy the game, and that's great. It's been really, really nice though. I mean, that's the thing. It's the first time I think that my wife and I, we've been together 11 years, and it's the first time that her and I have ever supported the same team at the same time. She's not an Everton fan, she's not a soccer fan or anything like that. But we both, we were pretty new to the sport of hockey, and we've been able to sort of it's a lovely relationship builder, put it that way. Thank you, Oilers. Thank you, Edmonton. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you came in May because you got some time to acclimatize. But obviously, this is your first Edmonton winter. It's sort of like throwing you in the deep end in terms of Canada terms. So how are you dealing with the minus 40, minus 50,
It's
snow
been
up to your waist?
it's been okay. It's been okay. We were chatting before we came on air there. That strangely we've adapted to it a lot better than I think everyone was expecting us to, and perhaps ourselves expected us to. We came from the UK, we came from the west of Scotland. That if an inch of snow falls, or indeed a single snowflake falls, trains stop, planes are grounded, and cars are littering the streets, having crashed and can't get a grip. Whereas over here, we've got 4x4, we've got winter tires, there's gritters and there's plows out every single day. I've got a snowblower. I threw my back out shoveling snow on the driveway the very first time and thought, that's it. No, I'm not doing that for the next 5-6 months. Went and got a snowblower, and now I do it every second, third day whenever there's snow. The minus 40, strangely enough, is the first time that we've actually felt cold. Because it's minus 40 degrees, with a wind chill of minus 50. Whereas, today it's minus 16, and I've dropped my son off at daycare, and it feels fine. It feels fine. But I've got a sweater on, a shirt. I wasn't going out in my t-shirt and shorts. But but yeah, it's been great. It's very, very different. We've had a white Christmas for the first time in decades, and you very, very quickly acclimatise to it because you can and you have to, and it's as simple as that. But I was getting a flurry of text messages from both sides of the Atlantic actually last week when we hit minus 40. People going, "Oh my God, are you all right? Are you okay? Is that the coldest you've ever had?" Of course, yeah, it is. But we were fine. We were in the house. The furnace is working. The streets have been ploughed. It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, some people lost power in Ontario, and it's not as cold as you, but it's still very cold. And I've seen the pictures and that's struggling.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, as long as the power is running, we're all good, right?
That's it. That's it. Long may it continue.
You probably had this question too from many, many people, friends and family included. But if you were moving to Canada, and no diss on Edmonton, but it's not usually people's first pick. Why did you and your family move to Edmonton?
My wife's a doctor, so she got the opportunity to work in a brand new hospital outside of Edmonton, actually. And my wife, just as a sort of potted history, she isn't from Scotland. She's from Northern Ireland, but she studied in Scotland, and she worked all over the country, really, as a doctor, as a medic. Whereas myself, I was born and raised in Glasgow. I studied there. I worked there, bar sort of 3 years when we were through in Edinburgh, which is only a 45-minute, 50-minute train journey away. So when we got the opportunity to do a proper up sticks and move, I was very, very excited about it, because it's not something that I've ever done before. My wife, she's a little bit more familiar with not having, not staying in places any longer than 2, 3, 4 years at a time, just because of the way that sort of, the training works as a medic. So yeah, and the opportunity came here. As I said, it was a good few years in the making, and we got very, very excited last May when we finally got on the plane and made the trip over. And it's the weird thing is, I've been back to the UK. I was back in the UK for a book festival in September. And I ended up doing like a sort of mini tour of the UK. So I was in the way that I worked it out. I think it was 9 cities in 10 days. I was in, and I was exhausted. Quite frankly, I was when I sat back down on the plane from Heathrow to Calgary. I just let out this massive, I'm glad, but it was lovely. Don't get me wrong, it's lovely seeing people, but it's very, very strange having been out of the country for 3 months to be heading back there so soon. But it felt so long, and I'm not back in the UK now until the end of February, start of March. So it'll be even longer then. So we'll get to see him, and I'm fully expecting it for me to be digging out the shorts and the Hawaiian shirt, because the temperatures over there by that point will be positively tropical compared to where we are just now. So we'll see. Yeah,
it's true. When we go down to Vegas and it's February, we're like, how come the pool's not open? It's to them it's freezing. To us, it's time to swim.
Listen, that's it. It's just as I was saying. It's amazing how quickly you adapt, and because you have to, or you don't have really any other option. It's amazing what that does for the soul.
Yeah. Well, let's talk books a little bit. We probably should have got to that subject a little earlier.
That's okay. That's all right.
So you're the author of the Bingo Hall Detectives, which you kindly sent me, and I've read the beginning, the first third or so, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
Thank you.
But maybe you get this question a lot. Cozies typically are written by women. I say that writing cozies myself, and I think there's Mike Martin, and that's the three cozy male authors I can think of in Canada. Why did you choose to write a cozy?
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, I've always loved cozy crime. You know, we seem to be going through a wonderful renaissance of it, where it's dominating bestseller lists and things like that all over the world, in fact. And you're getting more and more cozies rising to prominence as a result of it. And it's, you know, there's been a lot of talk of how it's the great cozy comeback, but cozy crime's always been as much part of the sort of crime genre, the mystery genre, as any other element of it. It's just, as I said, it's not really been as much part of the focus on it. I've always loved it because I love the escapism element of it. And that was one of the reasons that one of my biggest inspirations to write the Bingo Hall Detectives was an escapism for me. You know, it came out in April of this year. This is the thing about this time of the year, you forget what day of the week it is and what year it is and things like that. So it was April 2022. It came out in the UK and in Europe, and it's just been released here in Canada this week. And given the sort of brutal few years that I think everyone's had, you know, I put my hands up and say that thankfully it wasn't, my own circumstances weren't anywhere near as bad as some people have had. But I just think, you know, I think that's one of the reasons that that cozy is making such a massive comeback, is because it's pure escapism. You know, you'll know yourself, Eric, and readers watching, and readers, we're all writers are readers anyway, but readers in general. You know, you pick up a police procedural, a sort of classic, or a hard-boiled crime novel, and there's only so many times that you can read about some really graphic detail of an 8-ball wound in the back of someone's head, or the forensic details that need to go into to catching the killer. And you don't. It's not to say that you can't get that in a cozy crime, but by the very nature, by the very definition of what it is, you don't have to go into that sort of detail. And the strange thing is, I mean, this is it wasn't until I was kind of properly sitting down to write the Bingo Hall Detectives, and subsequently since it's come out and I've been asked about it, is, you know, cozy crime is still crime. It's you know, there's still a mystery there. There's still a murder usually that has to be solved, and you know, there's very few, if no more, heinous a crime than murder. And it doesn't, you know, what I always say about cozy crime is that it's still a crime novel, but you just don't see the knife go in, for example. You know, the knife is still in there, but you'll maybe come in as the reader when the knife's already in, and you don't have those grisly details towards the end of someone's life. But you know, a criminal still has to be caught, a killer still has to be caught, and you've still got to go about the business as a writer to do that. But the challenge, I think, is always in how it's told, and you know, a lot of people maybe unfairly kind of criticize cozy crime as not dealing with kind of, you know, real life crimes and things like that. But I'm a great believer that you can do any sort of crime, any sort of horrible thing to your characters if you package it the right way for cozy. And that's the challenge. And I've always loved the challenge. I've always loved it. Like I said, I love reading the genre. I love the escapism element of it, and it's very, very popular at the moment. And I think also there's a greater scope, I think, for things like comedy and a little bit more light relief in cozy than there maybe would be in a sort of traditional police procedural. It's not to say that they can't have it, but I just think that, you know, maybe not pie in the face, hopefully not pie in the face comedy in the Bingo Hall Detectives, but you know, it's maybe built a little bit more on the relationship between the two, our two budding sleuths, as opposed to, you know, say crime scene investigations and forensic analysis of the crime scene and things like that. So yeah.
Well, you mentioned your budding sleuths. You have an odd relation. Odd's not the right word. Unique relationship in that
much more diplomatic.
Yeah. Jason Brazel is ex-journalist, but his partner in solving this crime is his mother-in-law, Amita. You don't often see the son-in-law, mother-in-law
No, you don't,
crime
for very good
fighting
reason.
team. Yeah. So why did you choose that relationship to be your detectives?
I think, for the record, I've been saying this since it came out in April, that if I was to solve a crime with my mother-in-law, there would be more crimes caused, namely our murders of each other. But that's
I
by
could
the
agree
by.
too. Yeah.
Again, I always add the caveat that the book's dedicated to mother-in-law. So there you go. It's all about karmic realignment, isn't it? I love fractured relationships. I love it in all media. I love it in real life as well, obviously, as long as I'm not as long as I'm not one of the partners. I've always loved characters when I'm writing. I've always loved being able to have that back and forth between two characters that might not necessarily like each other, but they have to work towards the common goal. And crime, obviously, gives you a ready-made common goal. And I think that relationship between a mother-in-law and son-in-law, and indeed any in-law sort of relationship, it's quite an odd one. It's quite an odd one when you sort of take a step back and remove it, deconstruct it from everyone's sort of popular belief. But it's two people who are brought together by one other person, by one mutual person. They might never ever get on. If that one mutual person was there, they might get on. You always sort of hope that, but Jason and Amita certainly wouldn't. But they are thrown together forever potentially because of this mutual person, and there's no getting out of that. There's no getting away with it, and I think that was really at the core of when I was sitting down and writing and coming up with the characters. I should say as well, actually, oddly enough, Jason and Amita are probably the only characters in my writing career that have come completely fully formed from the off. I mean, I remember sitting down writing the first 2-3 chapters, first 5 chapters or something, and getting to the end of it and thinking, blimey, they're there. That's them. That's them. Whereas with other characters, even in the book and other stuff that I've written, you sometimes almost don't know them until you've written 10,000 words or 50,000 words or indeed a whole book. You don't know them until you get to that point and you have to go back and edit them. Whereas Jason and Amita, the pair of them together individually, how they acted, how they spoke to each other, that relationship between both of them, it was already there. And I'm grateful for it, because it's I'm very, very proud. I'm very proud of them both as characters, but I'm mostly very proud of how they interact with each other. And as we were chatting before we came on air, I'm in the middle of the edits for the second book, and that was a strange sensation because the Bingo Hall Detectives is the first in the series, and then this is the second one where you don't have to build. You're only building on what's already there, and without any spoilers, obviously, Jason and Amita's relationship at the end of the Bingo Hall Detectives is very, very different to what it's like at the start, and you don't have that to play with as a writer in the second one because you're building on what's already come before it. So trying to keep that spark has always been or always remains the challenge. But if I am, if nothing else, a glutton for punishment, and I love a challenge. So there you go. As all writers are, I think that's what it comes down to. I think that's what it boils down to.
I, like you, write about as you call them, a pensioner. Amita is a pensioner. You can often get the comment though that it's harder to speak of the older generation. Did you have difficulty creating Amita and being respectful? Because it's kind of odd because you kind of take a piss at them a little bit because they don't have the same facilities, but then they have more wisdom and they have different things to bring. So how do you be genuine about her without being insulting?
I think it's a very fine line. And I've got a very good editor. And funnily enough, it was, strangely enough, again, talking about the editing process and things like that. My editor, Jen Pegg, is there are no superlatives that I can use and adjectives that I can use to describe how wonderful she is, because she's so patient and she's just fabulous, and she just gets the characters, gets the story and stuff like that. And I remember with the edits for the Bingo Hall Detectives, there was a couple of lines where she'd edited them out, taken them out, where it was Jason actually speaking, not just about Amita, but about the rest of the bingo club and things like that. And it's amazing that it's almost a subconscious bias, right? It's you write these things and you think that you're trying to create this sort of this character in this world, And it takes someone else to go back and go, actually, do you know what? Let's soften Jason a little bit. Let's soften his attitude towards the elderly, towards his mother-in-law. And you think it's nothing. You don't, but it's the odd comment here. It's, it's a little snarky jibe there that even meant in jest, even meant with the best possible intention, it can still come across as being exactly as you say, Eric. It can still be sort of disrespectful. I think with Amateur, I made a very, very conscious decision to make Amateur the sort of tech savvy one out of the two of them. So to sort of, flip that horrible stereotype that, I should also point out, it's not just the elderly people that get the stereotype of being bad with technology. I am rapidly getting to that position. My son's 2. I reckon he's got about another 6 months before he's a lot more competent with tech than I am. It wouldn't be hard, But yeah, that, the sort of nature of the character of Amita is that, she's the one that's connected on Facebook. She's got WhatsApp groups. She's got, she knows how to work her phone, whereas Jason is completely, is dreadful. In fact, I wrote a section just the other day there where Jason couldn't get the camera to work on his phone quick enough for the purposes of what was going on. So he's standing there with a blank screen and he doesn't know how to do it because he's panicking. Now, we've all been there, we've all been there, but of course, Amita wouldn't have done that, and she disapproves and all the rest of it. I hope I hope that the characters are true to who they are as people. I hope that there certainly isn't any sort of disrespect to anyone in the novel, regardless of their age and all the rest of it. That's not what it is. One thing I was very aware of was not filling it with mother-in-law jokes. Particularly in the UK, that was a very, very, particularly in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s to a certain degree, that was the sort of backbone of every stand-up comedian's act was, oh, my mother-in-law said this and my mother-in-law did that. And I was very, very aware that when I sat down and I had the idea for having a detective duo of being a son-in-law and mother-in-law, that it wasn't just going to be filled with all these sort of old school dated stereotypes of they don't get on because they're just son-in-law and mother-in-law, and again, hopefully it's not got any of that in there, because it's not fair. It's out of date. It wasn't fair back then. It's certainly not fair now, and I think that's the thing. The characters should be real people. They should be rounded enough and put together well enough that you don't have to rely on these sort of outdated tropes. And hopefully that's the case. It's not really for me to say. It's up to the readers. This is where I get inundated with emails and direct messages on Twitter and Facebook saying that who do you think you are, Jonathan?
Yeah, I agree, because I got the same thing, but for the most part, my pensioner friends said, "Oh, you nailed it." So
good.
And so far from what I'm reading so far of yours is, yeah, okay.
Good.
Those are interesting characters. Yeah, I love the fact that that Amita is more tech savvy, kind of scolding Jason for not being so tech savvy.
It's good fun. It's good fun. Again, we're talking about that with cozy crime, is that you've got maybe a bit more room to have these sorts of running gags, these running jokes that it's just little pernickety things. And again, it just all naturally came to me when the characters formed in my head, and I'm grateful for it. I really am.
Excellent. Well, it was good fun talking to you. We actually went a little long.
Oh, blimey. I'm sorry.
But that's my fault, because I was enjoying myself too much, Jonathan.
Not at all. Not at all. You're far too kind. It's me. I blab too much, unfortunately.
No, it's a good quality for an interview, right? Because I get to be quiet. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure. And as you said, your book in Canada just recently came out, I think 2 days ago. I saw a picture of you reading it on social media in the snow. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Welcome to Canada. Yes. I said earlier on that was a great pickup getting you, as becoming now a Canadian author, but from the sounds of it, getting your wife too, another doctor in Canada. Thank you very much. 2 great pickups.
Absolutely. She does all the hard work. I just sit my feet up in the snow.
Right. Thank you very much, Jonathan. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.